Just know that that's how I did it. Maybe it's not necessarily how you do it. What an interesting question, guys. I had somebody ask me recently what the most difficult modification is to make to your 2015 Infiniti Q50. There are a couple of tough ones, no doubt, but I've never really thought about the topic, and I've never thought anybody would have any interest in it. But here we are. I have a list of 3-ish of the most difficult modifications that you can make to your Infiniti Q50. Let's rank them in order from least difficult to most difficult, shall we? Starting with number 3, I'm going to say the installation of suspension components. That could be lowering springs or coilovers, because they basically take about the same amount of effort, same steps, essentially, right? Got to take the back seat out, take those plates off, get access to the mounting bolts for the rear suspension, mess with the control arms up front, and it can be time consuming. Actually, I will say that installing lowering springs is more difficult than coilovers because there's an extra step, but about the same amount of effort, about the same amount of time involved, a little bit dirty. You can handle it if you have some basic tools or maybe an impact gun, and you can do it on your garage floor, but it is pretty tough and time consuming. That's the main thing for this one. And that's actually what separates that project from the next 2 on this list. It's not necessarily the time that becomes an issue, but it's the difficulty level for number 2 and number 1 on this list. So we'll dive into it. Number 2 on the list for the most difficult installation you can take on for your Q50 is, I'm going to combine these two, the installation of test pipes or headers. They go a little bit hand in hand, and I'm going to say that headers are even more difficult than test pipes. But if you're going from factory catalytic converters to test pipes or high flow cats, whatever, it's a little bit of a nightmare. It's tough to get access up into the bolts to disconnect the test pipes from your manifolds, especially that double bolt. You got to kind of go at it from the top. You might need some swivels and extensions, and it can just really be a nightmare. I would highly suggest just going to a shop to do it. I would really suggest, if possible, going to your tuner. In my case, I went to Soho Motorsports in Charlotte, North Carolina. They installed the test pipes for me and then put the car on the dyno and dynoed it right and tuned it right there. And that's ideal. You don't really want to drive around with test pipes or headers without a tune. The car needs it. So having the shop do it and then tune it, that's ideal situation. But headers are even more difficult. I didn't go with headers on my Q50. They really just don't give you all that much performance improvement over test pipes. From what I've been told by everyone, they can be a little bit of a pain to install, especially if you're trying to do it from your back on your garage floor. A shop can handle it probably pretty quickly, but in some cases, lifting the engine up a little bit off the motor mounts to get yourself some clearance for the headers to go down along the sides of the engine there in the engine bay, clearing your steering shaft. It can be kind of a headache job, like I said, especially if you're trying to do it in your garage on your back. That's a tough one, but number 1 is worse, I'm gonna say. Now, I experienced this one firsthand, and I gotta say it is worth the effort. It's worth the cost, especially if you need it. But the number 1 worst or number 1 most difficult installation project to take on for your Q50 is changing out that damn rear diff bushing. Now, it's a major improvement over the factory diff bushing. It's gonna add some rigidity to the rear end of your car, add a little bit of stabilization, prevent wheel hop, and just kind of help you transfer more effectively all of that power and torque you're making directly to the ground. And that is key. But if your factory rear diff bushing has already failed, maybe you're experiencing some clunking noises, some rocking back and forth at stop signs, or maybe you're getting a little excess wheel hop where you shouldn't be, you need this rear diff bushing. So yes, it is very difficult. It's a lot of work to pull the rear diff out, cut that nasty old bushing out of there, jam the new bushing in, not wrecking your rear subframe. It's a little bit tough. It's a little bit tough, but like I said, if your factory bushing has failed, you need to do it. There's really no alternative. You're going to be happy when it's done. But if you're doing it yourself, it's kind of a tough one. It's a tough one. Luckily for you, though, I have a full-length installation video on my channel. Go check it out. Now, I'm not a mechanic. I'm not a professional. When you watch that video, just know that that's how I did it. Maybe it's not necessarily how you do it or the best way to do it or whatever, but it's how I was able to accomplish it, and it worked. And that's all I can say. But take on the project at your own risk. Well, let me know in the comments below what you guys think is the worst, most difficult installation to do on your Q50. I'm curious to know. I know the 3.0T guys, the turbos, changing out the turbos, that's got to be a tough one. But for the 2014, 2015, and in my experience, and from what I'm hearing on the streets, these are 3 of the most difficult installations you can take on for your car. Thanks for watching, guys. Appreciate the continued support. Thanks for watching this one. We'll see you in the next one.